Well, must be neat as a kid to be in New York a lot, and yet you had Scottsdale. The last family trip we took before COVID in February of 2020 was to Scottsdale. We spent about 8-9 days there,
Yeah.
climbing Camelback Mountain. We rented this Airbnb right by the Fashion Mall there.
Yeah.
It was really just a great. We actually drove out to the Grand Canyon. It was a lot of fun.
February is the perfect time. That's the best month of the year by far. My dad lives 5 minutes from Camelback, so that used to be my morning workout routine, which I was spoiled. I didn't realize it at the time.
Yeah, that is really, really cool. So, well, Nashville's pretty.
Yeah, most of the time. And then, I've never lived with winter before, and so winter comes around, and then everything kind of just turns gray. And you're looking around and you're like, where'd the sun go? And I haven't seen it for a week. And why do I feel so sad? Oh, it's because I haven't seen the sun in a week. But I've never had that in my life.
You're talking about Nashville?
Yeah. But I know Nashville's not even close compared to like a Michigan,
I was
for
going to say,
example.
come visit me in January in Michigan or February in Michigan. We'll talk about what winter's like, my friend.
Yeah. Well, yeah. There's a reason why I didn't go more north than Tennessee, because I don't think I could do it.
Now, I have a brother who lives in Murfreesboro, actually.
Oh, yeah.
And he really likes it there. And I think, you get all 4 seasons. And yeah, it gets cold, but not quite as bad as it is here. So,
yeah. Well, I don't, did you do a podcast with Jason?
No.
Okay. So this is the first time. I run a very informal operation over here. And so the process is we just talk for roughly an hour. And that's about it. So it's very, very simple. I don't even know what we're going to talk about, but it's going to be a great time.
All right. Sounds good.
I'm really excited about this, like I said, because there are 3 books I recommend. If somebody asks me, what are your top books? I've had a good reading habit since high school, but I've been really consistent for about 5 years now. So my rule is I read 10 pages a day, every single day, 365 days a year. Doesn't matter where I am, how tired I am. It's a non-negotiable.
Wow, that's great.
Well, it's not very much every day, but then you stack up the books. And so I have books everywhere now. And there's 3 books. Of all those books I've read, there's 3 books I recommend to everybody if somebody asks. I don't go around. I'm not one of those people, you need to read this book. But if someone messages me, what books do you recommend? How to Win Friends and Influence People is the first book I recommend. And I've read it. It's probably the book that I've read the most times, cover to cover, of any book I've ever read.
That's great.
I'm a huge, huge fan of the principles. And I tell people, hey, if you see the date it was written, don't freak out. Because if you didn't see that date, there's only a few references here or there that date it, but otherwise you would never know because it is completely timeless. The principles.
Totally timeless. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so you did not write the book, but since it was written a while ago, but you had this organization now. How did you initially get in with Dale Carnegie?
Yeah. So Aaron, just a little background, because just like you talk about that book is the most, maybe that book and the Bible are the 2 most influential books I've ever read. And and for a good part of my life, I've had that book, within 10 feet of wherever I am. But my father, was someone who always really talked about improvement and growth. And when I was a teenager, he introduced me to Dale, to How to Win Friends. And I remember, kind of being familiar with it a little bit, but it wasn't until I took a Dale Carnegie course as a young man. I was a young lawyer and I wanted to advance in my career. And I took this course and I started to really dig into the book. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is just so powerful. That program in that book truly changed my entire career trajectory, my entire life, because at that time, my goal was, it had been to join a big law firm, become a partner, make a lot of money, do this for decades. And here I am in this class. And one of the things we talked about was vision. What's your vision for yourself? Yeah. And I realized that I was a successful lawyer, but not necessarily a happy lawyer. And I ultimately left the practice of law. But the other thing, going back to what you're saying about the principles, because these principles, these golden book principles, I started to practice these every single day. Just like you said, you were telling me you read 10 pages a day. Every day I would practice a principle for years. I would pick a principle, I'd write it down, I'd have a quote, I would have a scale from 1 to 10, and I'd say, all right, how did I do today? So every day I would review it. And I'd say, gosh, don't criticize, condemn, and complain. I didn't do very well on this one today, so I'll work on this one. So, I literally worked on those principles for years. And what happened was people started to notice that I was becoming more approachable, more empathetic, better with people. I left the law. I went into a company. I excelled in the company. And I think a big reason that I did is because I was able to really work with people and just get outside of myself. I ultimately left that and started my own business. Dale Carnegie became my first customer. I developed an e-learning company in the early 2000s and developed e-learning to reinforce the Dale Carnegie principles in the sales program, the leadership program, the Dale Carnegie course. We had other clients. So ultimately, I sold that business, became the president of another company. And then in 2015, I was invited into the process when they were looking for a new CEO. And after a very, very rigorous interviewing process and battery of psychological tests and all these different things that I had to go through, it was they picked me. So it was great.
Yeah, I can imagine that is a taxing job interview.
It was a taxing job interview, and I got to tell you, I'm humbled because I know they interviewed a lot of people, and but to even to your question, this work of Dale Carnegie is brilliant, and the more I read his work or I study it or I try to, I wrote a book with his grandson Michael Crom called Take Command, as you know, and. And in that process, I'm just discovering it's like, oh my gosh, how brilliant Dale Carnegie was. That's why, we say, why is this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, been a bestseller for 87 consecutive years? 87. It's exactly like you said, it's timeless. And it goes to who we are today, just like it did way back then.
Well, it's timeless and it's just so simple. And he was an absolute master in human psychology. But he could explain it in such simple terms and made everything so relatable. And there's a story with everything. And here's how it looks like in practice. So you walk away from each chapter like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. I get it. And there's very few books that are written in such a simple, it's such a complex thing, is relationships, human psychology, but just boiled down into these very, very, very simple to understand principles. Like one of my favorites is, I'm not saying it the right way, but the principle of being, you're going to make a lot more friends being interested in others than trying to get people interested in you. And once you really knock that into your head, you just you end up talking a lot less. you end up actually focused on other people, and then get better results. And even to this day, daily, I am still like, I want to talk right now. And then I have to go, just shut up, just shut up, just shut up, just stop. And then I get so into whoever I'm talking to that that's the conversation, and that will carry me further than anything I can say to them about me. It just is so powerful.
Yeah, it's insightful and it's contrarian, right? Because on one hand, we think, well, if we want people to be interested in us, we should tell them about us. And we like to talk about us, right? But he's got a great story on how to win friends in that chapter that you're talking about, where he went to a dinner party and he's talking to someone who was a botanist. And he didn't know the first thing about botany. He spent the entire evening just asking questions and listening. And he found, exactly as you said, as he was learning, he was getting intrigued. He was interested. Yeah. He forgot about himself. And at the end of the conversation, the person had commented on, well, you are just the best conversationalist. And he's thinking to himself, I didn't say anything, yeah. But he gave that person respect. He helped that person feel important. And he was genuinely interested in that person and wanting to learn about them. And he left understanding something he knew nothing about. So it's really a win-win when we really try to understand people and learn from them. There's a great quote that he has in that chapter, I think, as well, which is from Ralph Waldo Emerson, which is that every person I meet is my superior in some way. In that, I learn from him or her. And it's really true. It's like, okay, so I'm talking to Aaron. What can I want to learn from Aaron. Aaron has had a whole set of you've had all kinds of different experiences, things I didn't know. And it's like, it's kind of fun to learn. So when we put ourselves in that mindset toward other people, as opposed to just, hey, let me tell you all about me, who likes those conversations, you know?
Well, and those have become some of my favorite conversations, is when I get to talk to somebody really excited and knowledgeable about a specific subject, and potentially a subject that I know nothing about, like botany, for example. But you just start talking to somebody that's really fired up about botany. It is so fascinating and so much fun to listen because they're just so fired up and they know so much. And every time I walk away from a conversation like that, like, even though I didn't talk, I get a lot out of it, because I'm like, wow, that even if I didn't understand what they were saying, because it's a complex subject, I'm just excited about how excited they are. That's so cool that they have that. And I run into that a lot in the trades. You have people that are absolute masters at just very specific things, and listening to them talk is awesome. Like, every time I get to listen to a mechanic, like a technician, heavy equipment technician, talk about what they're doing on a machine, I that's one of my favorite questions, is when I walk into a cat shop, someone's working on something, I'll just explain, like, so what are you doing here? And most of it goes over my head. I don't understand wiring harnesses and hydraulics and all that, but I love listening to them explain it. And I love trying to understand it in a simpler way. So yeah, that's a good example of a great principle. And I'm obviously very excited about this.
I agree with you 100%. I had the same experience. So when I left the law, the first job I went into, I would join a company called the Taubman Company. Taubman is one of the largest developers, managers of shopping malls in the country. It's 1 million square foot shopping malls. And they do construction. So they manage site development, construction, retail, all of the leasing, et cetera. I remember standing at a site that was being developed, and I was talking to this construction manager, and this is a guy who'd been doing it for 40 years, and I was, I don't know, my late 20s, and I said, can you just tell me about this? We just stood there, and I listened to him for like an hour, just telling him, like, oh my gosh, it was just absolutely intriguing. And there's a great Chinese proverb. I think I might butcher it, but it's something that you can learn more from a wise person in one conversation than you can from a month of book studying.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're talking to someone, whether it's the heavy machine person or a technician or someone who knows something, it's like, it helps us. We're not selfish in the process. We're trying to learn from listen to somebody else and so forth, but we benefit, by giving them our time and attention.
Now, one thing about the book, when I recommend it, and I know Dale Carnegie is not just this one book, but this is a good starting point. How to Win Friends and Influence People. I feel like the title itself catches people up a little bit, because they're like, well, what do you mean? Like, are you saying I need friends and then influence people? It's like, I feel like people think influence is that feels a little icky. I don't know about that, and I don't really need to influence people in my position or whatever it is. But it's pretty quick it's easy to explain to them. Well, you influence people every single day of your life, and if you're not deliberate about it, you're just like a plastic bag in the wind, and that's a very, very bad existence. That's a bad way to live. And even it's not just about business. It's if you're a parent with children, you are influencing your children every single day. If you are in a relationship, you have influence. And it's not, I think people take influence and make it into manipulation. It's not manipulation. That's what a relationship is. It's two people influencing one another in their behaviors. I just feel like the title catches people up a little bit in that regard.
It can, and I wonder if that's even something as that term has changed over the year. Although I think that over the years, I think the term influence is actually something that is taking on even a different connotation, because I'm hearing a lot of people talking about, especially in business, people are talking about the importance of influence. And really what influence means is, look, how do I communicate my ideas? How do I share my ideas or the things that I think are important, because I want to have an impact, and if I, and we think about all these things like agility and resilience and creativity, and all those things are fine. But if I can't have an impact on the direction, if I maybe I have an answer, but if I can't express that or communicate that, people want to advance in their careers. Well, how do they do that if they can't communicate effectively? If they can't interact with people, they don't understand human relations. So really it's a natural part of who we are. As you said, just, we're human beings, and part of being a human being is the desire to express ourselves, to have influence. And if we're not effective, or, and you think about what even is underlying that, we need to have confidence. A lot of people don't have confidence. A lot of people are worried about how they look or how they come off, or they have imposter syndrome. They think that, gosh, I'm not really, I shouldn't be in this position, or they compare themselves to other people. So the concept of being able to have influence really touches on a lot of other things that go beneath it. And, you mentioned Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. Another book, which is a masterpiece in my mind, is How to Stop Worrying and Start Living, because that really goes to even some of those things about, gosh, what do I have anxiety? Do I worry? What do I worry? Why do I stress? Why do I make a big thing out of something that's not? So, if we want to lead other people or have influence, we have to start with ourselves. And so that book, I think, is also really a critical one.
And confidence, I made the mistake of thinking you either have it or you don't. And that's just not how it works. I've always been naturally low confidence, and I've had to deliberately build my confidence. But I didn't really understand that until I became an adult and started to build my confidence largely through doing hard things, keeping my word, something like reading 10 pages a day. That helps build my confidence, because I say, this is a non-negotiable. I'm going to do this. And every day I do it. I kept my word today. I did what I needed to do. I've built that confidence here and there, but even I struggle with it. But with all of this, and especially just communication, I think people mistakenly think they understand communication because they communicate with people.
That's true. Yeah, very true.
and it's like, because you have a driver's license, you can drive a race car. That's not how it works. It's the same thing, but it's very different. And
there's an art. There's definitely an art to communication.
Yeah, and you have to become a student of communication. And once you become that curious student, it opens up so many doors. It's a little overwhelming at first, because you start to understand, like, oh wow, I have been making a lot of dumb errors here. But it's also so exciting at the same time.
Well, even sometimes, how do people perceive communication? I think some people think communication simply is me telling you something. I communicated to Aaron, but part of what Dale Carnegie says, he talks a lot about the audience. How do you connect with another person? Is there two-way dialogue? Are we speaking to someone in a way that connects with them? One of his principles is, really to arouse in the other person an eager want. How do I get someone to want to change? I can tell you something. I can tell my kids something, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm communicating effectively. I may have expressed my opinion, but not communicated. Communication really is something that's two-way, and it is an art, and it's something that takes practice and learning. But it's really cool, because when we can communicate effectively, then we can build trust. We can have a good relationship with people. Yeah. But communication involves listening, right? It's not just talking, but it's like, oh, I want to listen to what Aaron has to say. And not just even listening, but I really want to make sure, did I understand that, Aaron? You said this. Here's what I heard. What I think you said is this. Is that right? And then when I say that, when you feel heard and understood, it's like, yeah, okay, so Joe understands. We talk about empathy a lot, and empathy isn't necessarily just like, hey, people think empathy and sympathy are the same, but empathy, can I try to see things from your point of view? And people appreciate that level of respect.
Yeah, and I've started speaking more and more over the past 2 years, especially. And when I did it initially, I was all wrapped up in me. I was still trying to deliver value, but it was about me. It was really about surviving and getting up there and not stuttering and delivering a cohesive message. But then, a few months ago, I started to basic communication principle, make it about the audience, not you dummy. And once I started to frame it in, okay, how can I bring this specific audience the most value? And forget about me. No one cares about me. What they care about is them and what they can do to better themselves, better their businesses, whatever it is. And as soon as I started framing it like that, this makes a lot more sense. And now I'm so excited to go talk to people, because it almost took the anxiety away. It's not about me. They don't care about me. They don't care how I look. they just want to get better. And if I can help them do that in some small way, that's a win. Which is, it's something like that is a very, very exciting realization for me recently.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a huge insight you had, Aaron, because we have one of my favorite programs that we offer. I think one of the most powerful programs is called High Impact Presentations, and it's really about how do I deliver a high impact presentation or powerful talk, whether it's with a one-on-one conversation or with a group. And one of the things we always say is, if you feel nervous, and it's natural to be nervous, right? But if you really have a lot of anxiety and so forth before a talk, the first question you can ask yourself is, who am I thinking about?
Mm-hmm.
Am I thinking about myself or am I thinking about the audience? Chances are, if I'm really anxious, I'm thinking about myself. I'm thinking about, oh gosh, I'm trying to memorize these words. Am I going to say these things right? How do I look?
Yeah.
I don't want to look stupid, all these different things. It's like, stop. Okay, if I am talking about something that I'm excited about, I've earned the right to talk about it, I'm eager to share it, and then I'm thinking about the audience. It's like, I want to give this to the audience as a gift, right? It's like, how do I impact even one person in a powerful way? Now I'm not thinking inward, I'm thinking outward. So that insight that you had is really an important part of communication and becoming really a powerful presenter.
I know people, speaking is something that terrifies a lot of people. Why are people so terrified about public speaking?
I think it goes to the point that you're making, which is I think people are worried about how they're going to look. We worry about looking stupid. We worry about being embarrassed. We worry about being laughed at. And a lot of these things even go back to just even our own childhood, being in a classroom, and what are people going to say about me? And we've got these kind of innate. We're wired, I think, from a safety and security mindset a little bit, even emotionally, to protect ourselves and to be defensive. And so, so we might have some of these things just kind of hardwired into who we are as people. But I think that's fundamentally, what's at stake. And then we can go out from there. It's like, oh, if I give a bad presentation, how's this going to look at me? How's it going to affect my job? How's it going to affect my livelihood? Or what are people, what are people going to say on social media or whatever, So, but all those things I think come to a common root, which really is, a fear or a worry about how I am perceived.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, one of the things I've learned as I've gotten older, and I have the wisdom of a few, maybe a few more years than you have. I'm 55, but so just by virtue of those years, I've realized. When I was younger, I used to worry so much about what people thought. And it's just kind of like you said. I think, you go to a party and we're thinking about ourselves. Who are other people thinking about? They're thinking about themselves. They don't care about me.
Yeah.
So why am I so worried about it? So it's kind of liberating when we realize that all this pressure we put on ourselves. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's important to think about how we're presenting and how we're coming off and dressing for success and all those kinds of things. And it's important that those things don't have an oversized role in our perception of things.
Yeah, and as you're talking, I'm trying to think through how to make this relatable in the construction world, because that's what we talk about typically. And I was thinking, well, there's really no public speaking for people in construction. But then I thought, well, wait a minute. There's something called a toolbox talk in the mornings, or a job hazard analysis, where everybody gets together in the morning, first thing before they go to work, and they huddle up. So it's a circle. Depending on how big the job is how big the circle is. It's funny. It's like kindergarten. Everybody getting in the circle and listen up. And the superintendent, foreman will talk to the crew. And so sometimes it's a foreman talking to 3 people. Sometimes it's a project manager talking to 100. But now that I'm thinking about it, there's public speaking on just about every single job site in America, almost every single day. And yet that's a very valuable opportunity if you know what to do with it. But I would say like 9.8 out of 10 job meetings I attend are identical. They're all exactly the same. You could just take one hard hat off, put the other one on with another company logo. You wouldn't know the difference. But that's just such a great opportunity to lead, to communicate more effectively, to become more productive, to be safer, if you have the skills to take advantage of the opportunity. But I see a lot of people, they don't have those skills, and it's not their fault. They've never had the opportunity to learn them anywhere.
Well, everything you're saying is dead on. At the end of the day, whether it's 3 people or 50 people, we're still communicating. It's still person to person. And the question is, how do I interact with another human being? And, in the construction industry, again, which is something I know a little bit about, having spent some time in it, there are people with different roles and different responsibilities, and we have to communicate. We have to communicate clearly. And we've often got to inspire action around how something's going to be done, or the way it's going to be done, or when it's going to be done, or whatever the case might be. So, I can tell someone to do that. You go do this, or I can communicate in a way that at least to demonstrate some understanding of, hey, well, we've got these challenges over here. Well, tell me about the challenges. What are you worried about? And whether it's a person who's doing construction work, whether it's an architect or someone who's on the site, or an engineer, or someone who's doing sales, there's a whole range of people that are involved, but all of it involves person-to-person communication. So the skills that we're talking about, even though we were talking a moment ago about, hey, maybe standing up on a stage, but we're all of our communication is a degree of the same thing. We're expressing our ideas. We're trying to connect with people. We want to influence in a positive way. We want to get great results. So it really doesn't matter kind of what role I have. These are still skills I have to have. And by the way, and some people we know are good at it. Some people, they've got good emotional control. Someone can get frustrated or angry or lash out or whatever, and that has a certain impact on employee engagement, whether someone's going to stay with us, say, hey, I don't need this, forget it, I'm out. Or whether I can just really be more inspirational, understand where someone's coming from, listen to an idea, and so forth. So again, it's multifaceted, but it's all people. It's all people skills.
Yeah, and on the frustration side of things, something I've tried to do over the past few years is just be aware of when I'm frustrated, or flustered, or start to get emotional, or stressed, and I'll try to pick up on it. And I'm getting worked up right now. And then as soon as I'm able to, I have that awareness now. I catch it and then bring it out into the light, and then that it goes away pretty quick. Most of the time, sometimes the anxiety sticks with me, but I've even tried, because I know, emotion is a key part of communication. But you want to have it directed. You just don't want the horse out of the barn, because then good things I've found don't happen. And so even with my own communicating, I've tried to just, step one, recognize, I need to just stop right now, because I'm getting a little worked up, and I need to just remove myself until I'm good to go. And then I'll get back in the game, because if I keep going, I'm going to screw something up.
Yeah, no, 100%. And, but to have that kind of introspection, where you can look inside and realize that is really, really valuable. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we look at other people. We say, "Gosh, this person's just a difficult person." Hey, sometimes I can be the difficult person.
Yeah.
And we try to analogize it a little bit, right? To say you got the oil light in your car. The oil light in your car starts blinking. You're like, "Gosh, I wish this thing wasn't going off," but it's warning me that if I don't do something, I'm going to have a problem. And frustration and irritation and some of these negative kinds of emotions, that it's like, if I start to feel those, it's like timeout. I need to back off right now and kind of work through this. Otherwise, this could go someplace not very good. And frankly, sometimes it does go to a place that's not very good. And there are times that I've said things to people that I've regretted. But the difference is I've gone back. I try to think about these, but every day, you talked about kind of that consistent habit of reading 10 pages of a book every day. One of the consistent things I try to do every day to make sure I'm focused on good relationships, and I know we all have blind spots, is to take time every morning and just to reflect on the prior day and to think about, gosh, what went well, what did not go well. I mean, many times I'm like, gosh, I really don't like the way I came off to so-and-so, and I'll go back and apologize.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things that Dale Carnegie, teaches in How to Win Friends and Influence People is, hey, look, if you're wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically. Say you're sorry. Make amends and keep the relationship going in a positive way. We all make mistakes. We all know we make mistakes. So it's important to be able to own those.
Yeah, and that's another habit I've tried to create too. Is I write. I have a little notebook, and my rule is I have to write 1 page a day, and it doesn't matter what I write on that page. I just have to write 1 page, and a lot of times it's me analyzing conversations that I've had that day, interactions that I've had. Like, yeah, I you know what, that was really stupid. Like, why did I do that? Or here's how I felt after that conversation. Or I got worked up by this. And just trying. I don't know if I read it in this book or another book or where I learned it, but auditing your day and auditing your conversations and relationships is crazy, crazy powerful. Because again, I think it's a lot of people just go through life just assuming just like a plastic bag in the wind. It's just, they're just being carried wherever the day takes them. But when you realize that, wow, I'm actually in control of the relationships I have in my life, the quality of relationships I have, the quality of communication and ideas that I have, it's so cool and it makes things so much more fun. It doesn't make it easier, but it makes it more exciting at least.
So I'm curious, tell me, I'd love to hear about how you do that. So do you have a specific time of the day that you go back and you reflect, or do you do it throughout the day? You've got your notebook and something comes up and you write it down. I mean, what's your process?
It's typically every evening when I read. So I kind of do everything. I call it doing my chores every day. So that's one of my chores I have to do. But it's just stream of consciousness. So whatever's on my head, whatever's in my head, and there's no rhyme or reason. There's no format to it. I just start writing. And it's just about how I've felt, cool stuff I did today, what I did for my workout. Hey, I felt great, and this is why. I met this person. It was really cool. It just goes all over the place. But it's nice to have a moment to at least audit every single day. And then I know, like I've been doing it for years now, I have all these notebooks of everything I've done for years now. Maybe I'll want that one day, or maybe I can go back, 2 years from now and look back on what was I thinking 2 years from now, and even just recognize, wow, I know I'm not where I want to be, but I'm at least not as much of a dummy as I was 2 years ago, or that's the hope. It's just a cool habit I think I've picked up and stuck with.
Well, it's so valuable because, as you said, people all of us, we can get swept up by our days or weeks or months. It's like, here we are, it's September 15th today when we're recording this. Gosh, it seems like yesterday was January 1st and tomorrow's going to be January 1st. It's like, hey, making sure that we're creating time in our day to take stock. Otherwise, it's so easy, at least for me, to just wake up and like, all right, what I got going on today, get going on emails or texts or whatever else. It's like, no, I mean, my routine's in the morning. More than the evening, just because I'm good in the morning. It sounds like you're good in the evening. My creative juices are first thing in the morning, so I kind of have that time. But whatever it is for somebody, if it's you at night or me in the morning, but to take that time and to spend some time thinking about what's important to us and what do I have to get done today? What are the relationships I need to work on? I think part of that is really building a mindset that is really important in having good relationships and living the life that we want to live.
Yeah, and I think I've been so serious about it because what I've realized recently, and this is a realization in the past 60 days probably, I started this company about 5.5 years ago now. And when you start a company, you can give yourself whatever title you want. And I quickly became technically speaking, I didn't call myself this, and it's never really been on my LinkedIn, but or like I just made up my title on LinkedIn, for example. But technically, founder and CEO, and then the business grows, and you're just the chief executive officer of this growing business. But what I realized was, I'm not really a chief executive officer. Just because I say I'm a chief executive officer, do I have the skill set necessary to be a chief executive officer? Do I communicate in a way a chief executive officer would? Do I lead? Do I have that level of confidence? And I've recognized that I'm a founder, sure, absolutely, founder of this business, but I feel like I need to grow into that chief executive officer position. So in my mind, I've almost given up that position. And I've said, you know what? Here's what needs to happen for me to actually earn that. And I need to earn that because that's an earned position. That's not just because I call myself the chief executive officer. And it's been a humbling, a slice of humble pie to recognize that just because I call myself something doesn't make it so. And I need to grow to make that a reality. And fast.
I mean, it's a powerful insight. I'm trying to figure out the degree to which I agree. And I mean, you've got and I think it's critical to have, and I try to have this too. It's just this continuous growth mindset, this learning, adapting, and getting better mindset. And, and at the same time, sometimes we can be our own worst critics. I think one of the biggest challenges that we all have is we can be vicious about how we speak to ourselves, the things we say to ourselves. We can undermine ourselves. We can say, I'm not worthy of this, or I'm not good enough for this. And then that can lead to a lot of anxiety. And I'm not saying that that's what your situation sounds like. Well, your view has been very, very constructive.
Yeah.
I guess my thought is that, another approach might be to say, I am the chief executive officer. And, in how do I mean, and I'm a CEO of this company. I've been at Dale Carnegie for 8 years. I've, founded my own company many years ago. I've been the president of a company. I'm always going to be growing. I'm always going to be striving to become a better leader. I always look for mentors and ways that I can get better. And I am embracing kind of where I am right now. I'm going to do the very best I can, and I'm going to continue to grow. And, I think sometimes, Aaron, we need to look back to look forward. I always say that, which is, they say, do I have the confidence to do what I need to do? It's like, well, no, I've done a lot of really good things. I mean, I like your journal. I do too. I've got my, this is one of many of my journals. I keep them with me all the time. But I'm looking back and saying, I've done a lot of things that are really good. I need to make sure I remind myself. This is something Dale Carnegie talks about. It's like almost having this constant conversation with ourselves, if you will. Giving ourselves a pep talk, reminding ourselves of the things that are really good. Yeah. So the fact that you founded a business, that's huge. The fact that your business has grown as successfully as it has tells me you got to have some really mad organizational skills and people skills, great skills. So I don't know. I mean, it seems like you've earned the right to that role based on the success you've had. But I'm with you in terms of just constantly trying to improve and push ourselves.
No, that makes good sense.
If you don't mind my saying, I'm not trying to be presumptuous. I'm just acknowledging what you've built and what you've done in a short period of time, and frankly, the vision that you have for this industry, which is so important, and and the vision that you've cast and the ability to execute behind it. So those are really, really important skills. And I think too, sometimes we've got skills that sometimes we may not even see or acknowledge in ourselves. By the way, we've also got blind spots that we need to work on. I mean, I'm constantly trying to figure out what are the blind spots I can get rid of and improve on. But I want to make sure that we all give ourselves some credit when credit is due. That makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess the principles that are taught in How to Win Friends and Influence People, like you said, you can turn them inward. Like, don't criticize, for example, because with yourself, even it's destructive in a lot of ways.
Well, I mean, and I guess it depends on how we define criticize, right? Sure. So, but yes, I mean, to be critical, to complain. I mean, look, I am a recovering perfectionist. I'm the guy who would have 10 things in a to-do list, would do 9 and would be mad and about the one thing I didn't get to. And what I've learned over time is to say, you know what, this is great. I got to the 9, and I'm going to get to this last one. So yeah, when we apply don't criticize, condemn, and complain as an example to ourselves, I think the vast majority of us people can be hyper self-critical. And really can take ourselves into a bad place if we let it. So yeah, that's a very important principle to keep in mind and to continue to think about how do we want to keep getting better. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm not perfect. So
has it, or at least in the beginning, was it difficult to pick up this torch and be the face of this legacy that is extraordinarily substantial. How was that?
Yeah, it was intimidating. I'd say it's a tremendous, and it remains, it's an honor and a responsibility to say. I mean, I'm sitting in Dale Carnegie's chair. It can be overwhelming at time, and it can be humbling. But frankly, it fuels me with a desire to, and I think often about what are the things that Dale Carnegie would do if he were here, and how do I make sure I'm doing those things? And Dale Carnegie believed that every single person has inherent greatness, and I believe that. So his whole program and everything he wrote about in our Dale Carnegie course and what our franchisees are doing today all over the world is about how to bring out the very best in other people. So, while it can be daunting to think about just, this is a global company. We've got 200 operations in 86 countries. Dale Carnegie started this with one course 111 years ago in New York City. But I look at this with just a tremendous sense of stewardship and really a desire to take Dale Carnegie's principles and ideas and programs to as many people on the planet as we possibly can, because I think when people have access to this, it doesn't matter who they are. Mm-hmm. It could be, whether I'm on a construction site or whether I'm in business or work in a restaurant, whatever I do, these are things that can help me. And just one story, I want to be sensitive about talking too much, because it's something we teach us about listening.
You're here to talk, so this is good.
Yeah, thank you. So I went into a program one time. This was at Middle Tennessee State University. So every business student at Middle Tennessee State University takes a Dale Carnegie course. It's a required part of the program if you're going to get a business degree.
Wow.
And one of the students, I'm in the back of the room. The dean's in the room. Our franchisees in the room. We're just watching these talks, and this 20-something man stands up. He's getting his MBA, and he says, I'm really excited about this class, and I knew it was going to help me in my career. But let me just tell you how this is saving my marriage. And he gave a talk about applying the principles and about how it's making him a better person. At the end of the day, these things that you and I are talking about right now, I would like to think, I'd say humbly, hopefully, that they've made me be a better leader, a better husband. For almost 27 years now, I've been married, a better father. My kids might disagree, but they would tell me I need to work and don't criticize, condemn, and complain. But these are principles that can help us in everything that we do. So to your original question, that's what fuels me, and with the sense of just how do we help as many people as possible get access to these treasures.
We kind of skipped ahead. Can you just explain who was Dale Carnegie? Because he's not the only famous Carnegie in U.S. history. There was Andrew Carnegie, steel magnate. Dale Carnegie was not the steel magnate.
He's not. That's true.
Who was this guy, and how did he get to this position of teaching a course like this?
Yeah, so it's interesting because he lived at the same time as Andrew Carnegie, and even today, many people will confuse Dale Carnegie and Andrew Carnegie, and they'll say, Carnegie Mellon or Carnegie Hall, and different Carnegie. So Dale Carnegie was born in a farm, or he lived in a farm. He was born in rural Missouri in the late 1800s. Very poor family. I mean, they really struggled to make a living as family as farmers. His parents aspired for him and for his brother to have a better life. They moved near a college in Missouri, what is in kind of central Missouri, and he learned at that time it was a teaching college. But he discovered in that program that he was really good at debating and at speaking. And he decided ultimately to try his hand first in sales. And so he went and he was selling correspondence courses, and it was a complete failure. He then went and worked for a meat products company called Armor Meats, and he was really, really determined and really, really good. And he rose to the number one salesperson in the country. That's when they asked him, "Hey, we'd like you to be a part of management." He decided instead to take his winnings, if you would, and he wanted to be a speaker. There was this program called the Chautauqua Circuit, which I think is maybe the 1900s version of TED Talks. People would go over, these speakers would go from city to city, and people would gather around, and a person would give a speech or a poem or that type of thing. And he decides he's going to go to New York City Actually, he decides he wants to go to Boston at that time. First, he's going to go to Boston and study being a speaker. And he has a chance encounter. He's on a train, I think in South Dakota or the middle part of the country. And he sits next to this reverend who's also a speaker. And the reverend says, "You don't want to go to Boston. You want to go to New York. Go and study acting, because then you're going to get everything you would have gotten in Boston, and you'll get these other skills." So he goes to New York, and this is the early 1900s. And he realizes he's not great as an actor and doesn't really want that kind of a life. So he's struggling. He's struggling in New York City, and he decides he says, how do I make a living? You know what I'll do? I will give courses on public speaking. So in October of 1912, he stands up in a class at the YMCA in Harlem. And he's got people around, and he's teaching about public speaking. And he sees people are kind of starting to doze off a little bit. He's running out of material. So he starts calling people up to talk. And he realizes in that moment that not only is there huge value in getting people up to talk, he sees that there are the confidence issues, that he learns about the interpersonal challenges that people have. And ultimately, that was the first Dale Carnegie course in 1912. And that was the beginning of our company, which is 111 years this year. And these programs that have touched millions and millions of people and tens of millions of people all over the world.
Yeah, the impact has just been absolutely extraordinary with how many people the organization has touched over a century of this teaching, which is any company that's been around for a century, that in itself is a really big deal. Because if you look at how many companies there are still around over a century, there's not very many of them. It is a very, very small list for good reason.
It's really true. And, people will sometimes look at this and say, well, what is this program was started originally 100 years ago. What could that do for me today? Or this book was written, 87 years ago. Well, I might turn that around and say, how in the world does a program that was started 100 years ago, how is it in 400 of the Fortune 500 companies today? How is it that tens and tens, maybe hundreds of millions, I don't know how many people have read How to Win Friends. We know how many, tens and tens of millions of books have been sold, but how many people have read it or been impacted by it? It's because, to your original point about Dale Carnegie, he was brilliant. He was essentially an innovator around human relations and who we are as people, and the things he discovered and wrote about then and created in our courses that people can take today. You can go and take a Dale Carnegie course today, probably in any city or thereabouts, any major city in America, any state, all over the world. I mean, this is, and it's been refined and built upon, and it's made even stronger. And now there's technology around it. You could do it live online or in person, or you could listen to an Audible book or that type of thing. So there's different ways to access it, but I can't imagine why anyone today would not minimally pick up How to Win Friends and Influence People and read that book, or take a Dale Carnegie course if that's something that's an option for them, because it's an investment in ourselves, and it's an investment in our relationships and the quality of life we're going to have.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be around if it was snake oil. Like someone would have figured it out by now. Like, wait a minute, this is not what they're saying it is. If it's stood up on its own 2 feet for 100 years, it's rock solid.
Listen, Aaron, I got to tell you, everywhere I go, I will talk to people all over the world. I was in India a couple weeks ago, and people are coming up to me and they're telling me their Dale Carnegie stories, the impact that it's had on them, how it's changed their lives or had an impact on their careers or whatever it might be. People who were stuck at a certain level in their careers, and then because they really couldn't relate to people, they couldn't kind of communicate effectively, and they take one of the programs or they read the book. One of my favorite stories is, and I think one of the greatest leaders of our time is Alan Mulally. He's the former CEO of Ford Motor Company and Boeing. And he talked at our convention in 2016 about the impact that How to Win Friends had on him and his leadership at Ford. Ford, when he took over this company in 2006, was on its way into bankruptcy. And he completely turned it around, and he did it using these people first kind of principles. He really engaged people effectively and created transparency and trust, and turned the company from a multi-billion-dollar losing a year company to making billions of dollars a year. And he talked about, hey, look, these principles were really important in my leadership. And I think we we're just talking about the impact. That's not just about, him leading or the immediate people he's leading. It's the communities that are touched to the people. It's the families that are touched. Someone goes home after a day at work and they're working in a company with a great culture that I want to be at.
Yeah.
That's much different than coming home after having a really, really rotten day with people who are toxic. And there are plenty of companies like that, and organizations like that, and teams like that really are draining. So the Dale Carnegie principles really can help bring out the best in people and companies.
Well, and that's why we put the Dirt World Summit together, because our premise is, all right, if we really want to go grow this industry into the next generation, and it's just so that the Dirt World can support society, food, water, shelter, help with those essential needs long into the future. How do we really impact everybody? And the natural starting point for that is leadership. Well, let's start with the leaders, because from there, if you start with the right person at one organization and get them on the right track, that could impact the entirety of the organization. And then that doesn't just impact the organization, that impacts the companies they do business with, the families that they support within that organization, the people outside of the organization that those families interact with. The ripple effect is massive if you start with leadership, which is why I'm so excited about what we're doing next month, because I think that's one of the biggest needs in this industry. Is it's construction. Everybody's really good at building stuff and solving challenges and doing hard work, but communication is not exactly top tier, I would say.
Well, and it all connects. It's communication, and that connects to how we interact with other people, connects the kind of culture that we have. It connects to whether people want to be in the industry or be in that business or work for that supervisor or not. And, you've done such a phenomenal job. I'm excited about the Dirt World Conference, of really framing not just a challenge that the industry faces, but I think you've really done a great job of putting together solutions and ideas that can help the industry thrive. Because the issues that exist here in the United States are facing the construction industry are the same ones that are facing the industry outside of the United States. Whether when I'm in India and I'm meeting with construction companies, and I met with a number of them, I hear the same kinds of things that I hear in the U.S. and I hear the same types of things if I'm in Spain or if I'm in Europe or if I'm so you've got your thumb on the pulse of something that's really, really important. And we're all connected to the dirt world in one way or another. So it's really an important challenge to solve.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And I think one of the best things I've done in my life is the international travel, like you were saying too, because you start to recognize, one, that the United States is 4% of the world's population, which is very humbling. But then two, human beings are human beings. It's like, like my favorite thing, I went to the Middle East, for example, and for the first time. So you're in Saudi Arabia, or I went to China when I was maybe 22 years old. I go to China, Saudi Arabia, somewhere completely different, where I don't share the same culture, the same language, look like them, like nothing. And I'm still able to connect with these people with humor. Like there's still something funny that happens, and everybody's laughing, even though like there's just this human connection there. And then even though the people that you're with probably don't even understand what's so funny, but because you think it's funny, they're laughing. You're like, wow, this is amazing, because I'm on the other side of the world right now, and I'm having this human, I'm making this human connection that is just so special. It's so, I take it for granted back home, but then I'm here. We have at face value nothing similar, and yet we're bonding over something that's funny, which I think is very cool. So I think from a communication standpoint, travel's been a big help for me.
Well, it's certainly eye-opening, because we all have different opinions or thoughts, or we hear things in the news about different people or cultures or cities or whatever it is, and when we experience it ourselves, we can, I think, realize that we're people are the same. I mean, in the sense that we're all humans, and there's certain things that connect us, and that's one of the reasons why, going back to where we started and How to Win Friends, we'd say, why is it that these principles, why is it that we've got thriving operations all over the world in all of these different countries? It's because these ideas that Dale Carnegie talks about, these principles, connect us across humanity. It's across cultures and religions and
Yeah.
skin colors and genders and all kinds of things. And they really go to who we are. And when we learn how to apply them, when we learn about other people, they can really help us connect way more effectively.
So what does, if I were to say I'm listening to this, I'm curious, maybe I'll take a course because, yeah, I could probably communicate more effectively. I could probably, what they're talking about is interesting here. I know I have some work to do. I certainly have some work to do. How does someone find a course, and then what does the course even look like?
Well, the starting place could be dalecarnegie.com. And that's one place to learn about courses. And there are different kinds of courses. The Dale Carnegie course, which is the really kind of the flagship program that we offer, is offered in different formats. Someone might say, we could offer it in a 3-day format. Sometimes it's once a week for 3 weeks. Sometimes it's 8 weeks. It just depends on kind of where you are and how you want to take it. Some people would say, I'd really rather have a time-spaced program over 8 weeks. I can practice things in between the sessions and so forth. Someone might say, that's great, but I don't have that. Or someone might say, gosh, I can't even get there. Is there something that's online that I can take? And, there's live online versions, there's in-person versions, there's all kinds of different versions. But the starting point is dalecarnegie.com. And frankly, what a lot of people don't know is a lot of companies will offer these programs. So it might be an employee going to their supervisor and saying, hey, I'd like to take one of these. Many companies will have budgets set aside, for these kinds of things. Individual tuition assistance, so you'd say, hey, I want to, and the company will pay for it. I mean, I'd say a high percentage of our programs are either paid for by a company or a company will have an in-house program. They'll say, in fact, I just got back from California. I was at a dinner talking to someone who's sitting next to me, and he said, oh yeah, we just did a Dale Carnegie course for 22 of our people. We brought Dale Carnegie in. So there's different ways that people can get access to it. But a good starting point is dalecarnegie.com.
That's good to know. And they can probably find the books on there as well, I take it?
You can buy the books on Amazon as a good place to get those, or Books A Million or Barnes & Noble, that type of thing. But the books are very easy to get. And again, I'd say too, How to Win Friends and Influence People is really the flagship book. How to Stop Worrying and Start Living is a great book. I might also humbly mention the Take Command book that Michael Crom and I wrote is a new book that's built on Dale Carnegie principles, and it brings in ideas from taking command of our thoughts and emotions, which is from How to Stop Worrying and Start Living, take command of our relationships, which is How to Win Friends, and take command of our future, which is around it's being intentional about the futures that we have. So that's also a book, takecommand.com. People can get information about that.
And I'm as I'm thinking through all of this too, the world obviously changed in 2020 and it got a lot more online, which arguably made these principles even more important, especially with digital communication, because you don't have those human cues that you're working off of when you're communicating in person, which then means that your communication skills are even more important because you're leaning more heavily on those skills rather than the natural part of communication that you're missing when we're talking like this, for example, through a computer.
Excuse me. Yeah, I mean, I think that's really true. A couple things happen as a result. I mean, number one, communication skills, I think, did become more important. And so now, when we're online, we've got to figure out I can't see all the nonverbal cues and so forth. I've got to be sensitive to, how I'm communicating, how I'm coming off. But another thing that really has happened, which I think is important to address, because mental health really is a very, very significant problem in not just our society, but I think societies around the world. People got disconnected a lot during COVID. People have come back and in many cases are afraid or uncomfortable interacting with other people. They'd rather interact via instant message or text or something that's non-synchronous, so to speak. So that's also something. And I would also say, as the future, there's a lot of change in the world right now. We talk about AI, we talk about technologies, we talk about robotics, we talk all these different things. The world's going to look, I think, very different in 5 or 10 years than it does right now in many, many ways. And so that can cause people stress and anxiety. So, how do I manage that? And these principles are really an important part of that process as well.
Well, and I think future state with where the world's going, I think these principles make you more valuable, especially in the labor market. Like if you're an
100%.
effective communicator, like me as an employer, someone as an effective communicator is more valuable to me no matter where they're at within the business. And they're going to be the people I'm thinking of first when it comes to, if push really comes to shove, they're going to be, hey, these are our most valuable players because they can get points across, they can speak with people, and they can work with others effectively.
100%. I mean, the role of teams is going to be really important, and the role of the individual in being effective. So, we think about, resilience and agility and communication and creativity. If we're going to have an automation of certain things, what we will have is an automation of the more processed, more mundane kinds of things. That's going to push all of us to really sharpen our saw, all of us to you really up our game, so to speak. So and the people are still going to be an important part of all of this. So who are the people who are really effective at other people? Who are the people who are effective in leveraging technology and really being creative and influencing? Going back to the whole original conversation you brought up about influence would be really important. Mm-hmm. So those skills are going to become more and more valuable, and it's going to be important for you, for me, for all of us. We talk about taking command of our own careers, of our own futures. Yes, we want our companies to do that. But no one said to you, Aaron, hey, you need to take time every day to work on improving yourself. But you've done that. And that's something that makes you more valuable. And I need to do that. And everyone needs to at least have some mindfulness about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's just, it's so valuable. I'm sitting here thinking it's just, especially as we've grown our business, we've grown, and when it was 10, 15 people, it was easy to communicate because you get everybody on the same calls and you get your points across in a very simple manner. But then as things become bigger and bigger and bigger, it just becomes so much more complex, and you need these completely different skills to manage more effectively. But it's no matter where you're at, it is so valuable. And one of the things I hear construction business owners, leaders say, probably more than anything about people, is if I didn't have the whole people thing, this would be easy. And
if only that, if only it wasn't for the people thing, right?
If only, but it's like saying I wish gravity didn't exist. It's like, well, deal with it. I don't know what to tell you. But if you look at it negatively, you're probably going to get lesser than results. You're going to get frustrated. You're going to have this stress, anxiety. It just doesn't make it fun. But if you look at it like this enormous opportunity that I believe it is, that's extraordinary. You can have more fun, you can impact more people, and you can grow the business, grow your career, grow your relationships more than ever before. So rather than looking at it like this curse, it's like, this is a huge opportunity. And I think with this workforce reckoning that the construction industry is staring in the face right now, I see it as an opportunity because, hey, we've done it this way for so long and it's got us here. We know it's not going to get us further. And there's going to be people that it takes a while. Some people are going to be slow to figure that out. And so if you're fast to figure that out, that opens a lot more doors. You can then leapfrog people you weren't able to leapfrog even 10 years ago in this market.
Yeah, no question. I mean, listen, the first and most important thing I think here, which you're touching on, goes to mindset, because two people can face the exact same problem with the same set of facts, and one person sees opportunity and the other person sees crisis. Yeah. And what's the difference? The difference is how we speak. So, for you to say, I'm going to look at this and look for opportunity. If you have people in the construction industry thinking about where's the opportunity, because there are going to be winners and there are going to be losers. There are going to be people who are going to grow and thrive, and there are going to be people who won't. They'll go out of business. And what's the difference? And often it will be around way that we think, where we find opportunity, whether we can be creative, whether we can communicate and influence and impact other people. How do we do that? But ultimately, it does come down. I happen to think, Aaron, that this is an exceptional time in the world for great leaders. There's a crisis in leadership. Everywhere we look around the world, we see these crises in leadership, not just in one country, but in countries all over the world and in companies. And for someone to look at this and say, this is the chance for me to improve my leadership. I mean, because it's easy if people simply if they're talented and they do great work and I don't have to do much. And I mean, that's easy for all of us, but what do I do when I'm dealing with someone who's difficult? What do I do when I'm dealing with someone who doesn't see things the same way or doesn't want to be there or doesn't want to work hard? That's the opportunity for leadership, really, to either bring out the best in other people, or I mean, there's that comment about you change people or you change people. But how am I going to manage my team, and how am I going to recruit great people? Going back to Alan Mullally, I was at a conference he spoke at not long ago, and he said, it all comes down to people. You have great people, then you can do great things. You have bad people, it's a lot harder. But where's the role of leadership? The role of leadership is developing people, bringing out the best in people, getting results that you otherwise couldn't get on your own. And I think especially because things are so hard in many ways and so dynamic and so constantly changing, this is a great opportunity for really excellent leaders to emerge and develop.
Completely. So it's dalecarnegie.com, and people can find everything they need to start growing as an individual leader on that site.
There's a lot that's there. We do have a YouTube channel. We are very active on social media. So people can follow us on Twitter, on LinkedIn. I'm personally very active on both of those platforms, constantly sharing ideas and insights and thoughts and quotes and things like that. So that would be at Joseph K. Hart on both LinkedIn and Twitter, at dalecarnegie.com or Dale Carnegie Training on LinkedIn and Twitter. Go to YouTube. We've got an Instagram page, TikTok, the whole thing. So lots of different ways that people can engage with our content.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thanks for stopping by, and I will be seeing you at the end of October.
I'm excited about it. It's going to be here before we know it. It's going to be, and listen, kudos to you again on this. Is really you made a leap of faith. You organized this conference because it was important, and I'm excited about how successful I know it's going to be.
Yeah, we're still nervous about it because we've never done it before. But I think once we do it and looking back on it, we'll think that was pretty cool. That was pretty neat.
Well,
Excellent.
Dale Carnegie had talked about all great things in life start with taking a risk.
Yeah.
And certainly you put yourself out there. The comfortable thing might have said, well, we can just keep doing what we're doing. And what you're doing you're doing it exceedingly well. Something like this is new and different. I know it's going to be successful. And frankly, if I were in the construction industry, I'd want to be there. I mean, this is going to be so valuable. It's one conference that is going to have so much valuable content. And now you've got great speakers and solutions. So I hope it sells out.
I think it will. And then my goal is to make everybody that didn't go look and be like, I should have went because that was really cool. That's the chip on my shoulder talking.
Well, I mean, a little bit. People should have. People right now, people are thinking about going. They should have a little bit of a FOMO, fear of missing out, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what could the difference in your business be if you're there and you're learning and you're taking all of these great things back versus if you're not, you're just doing whatever you're doing on the day to day. Sometimes we have to take time out and really work on learning and improving, and then come back and we can turbocharge our organizations. So that's how I'm seeing this conference.
Exactly. All right, Joe. Well, thank you for stopping by, and I think that's a podcast.
Awesome. Great to be with you, Aaron.